The Wild West. It's still out there. And we'll show you how to find it. This is today's Wild West. The 20 Mule Team borax freight wagons roll again in Death Valley. The harsh desert they made famous in the Old West. Quite a thrill on a November weekend for both the crowd and the Teamsters, as a set of freight wagons identical to those used in the 1800s and pulled by a 20 Mule Team paraded through the community of Furnace Creek in Death Valley National Park. The authentic recreation of the historic wagons, which hauled tons of borax across the Mojave Desert, is all thanks to the nonprofit Death Valley Conservancy.
We thought it was important to preserve this history, so we began a fundraising project to recreate these wagons. They are exact duplicates of the ones down at Harmony, exactly to scale, down to the same wood species.
Conservancy co-founder Preston CHIARO has had a lifelong passion for Death Valley and is a former president of U.S. Borax, the company well known for its historic roots in Death Valley and its 20 Mule Team trademark. He was even invited to speak at dedication ceremonies after Death Valley became a national park in 1994.
So here I was, the president of a mining and chemical company, speaking at the dedication of a national park. But that's just a reflection of the close connection historically between the Borax Company and the Park Service.
The last intact set of freight wagons from the 1880s, no longer operable, are on display in the park at the ruins of the Harmony Borax Works, the 19th century plant that refined borax ore, producing 3 tons a day. Pulled by a 20 Mule Team and driven by a pair of Teamsters, a loaded set of 2 ore wagons and a 1,200-gallon water wagon weighed more than 36 tons as it traveled 165 miles one way to the town of Mojave, a 10-day journey through the scorching desert.
To see that come to life, to see the faces of those in the parades and the awe and the rekindling of the awareness of the Death Valley history is amazing to be a part of.
After a nationwide search, Dave Engel was chosen to resurrect the wagons. Few people have the know-how to accurately recreate these giant horse-drawn wagons that weigh 4 tons apiece with wheels 7 feet tall. But at his shop near Yellowstone National Park, the Montana wheelwright, blacksmith, and craftsman has been building and restoring horse-drawn vehicles for 40 years.
It is a combination of 2 things that I've always loved. I was raised on horses, and I was raised on woodworking.
Still, bringing these massive freight wagons back to life was a daunting challenge.
It was a complicated endeavor. Everything is 3 and 4 times the size of what a normal wagon is. So the basic principle of wagon building is still there at its core, but dealing with the size and mass of it all was the challenge.
Step 1 was creating a blueprint, which Dave did by measuring and photographing every detail of the historic wagons displayed at the park.
Down to every little piece of iron.
How long did that take?
All winter.
Long before Dave was hired for the job, the Conservancy was raising money to pay for it. It took 7 years to raise the $400,000 needed for the project, $150,000 for each ore wagon, and another $100,000 for the water wagon.
The Borax Company was our biggest donor. They gave $150,000, so they themselves paid effectively for one of these freight wagons.
Building the wagons was one challenge. Finding someone who knew how to hitch up and drive a 20 Mule Team was another.
The mules that we use here today are owned and trained and driven by Bobby Tanner. He recreated the same techniques that were pioneered right here 140 years ago.
The first time we hooked up a 20 Mule Team hitch was back in 1981, and we had a person show us how to hitch it up. He had worked in previous hitches and showed us how to hitch it up. So let's get all this stuff unloaded here. Why don't you take...
The son of a Sierra Nevada outfitter, Bobby Tanner grew up with horses and mules at Red's Meadow, his family's resort and pack station near Mammoth Lakes, California. He's pulled other historic wagons over the years with his 20 Mule Team, like the historic mining wagons of Sun Valley, Idaho's Wagon Days Parade.
We just started doing it, and made probably every mistake that you could think of, and learned from our mistakes, and so it's been a long process, but we've figured out the tricks to it.
Bobby says back in the day, the 10-day wagon treks across the Mojave were pretty routine for the two-man crew. With big 8-inch wide tires, the massive wagons could float on the sand as they were pulled across the desert. At day's end, the teamsters would lay out the harness in an organized fashion and set the mules out to graze, always with a horse, the bell mare.
Mules like horses, and so if you're out in the middle of the Mojave Desert and you don't have a horse around to keep the mules company, you may get up in the morning and your mules may be gone. So if they have a bell mare to keep the mules happy, that was the purpose of why they had horses in the hitch.
The 20 mule teams almost always included 2 horses, hitched up in the wheeler spot closest to the wagon.
The wheeler spot is where you can hide the weaker animals, and the horses, big draft horses don't do well in hot, dry desert climates. So the wheeler spot is a place where the animals can be not quite as strong and still be part of the hitch.
One of the 2 teamsters usually rode one of the horses while the other walked or rode in the wagon. The old-timers, of course, had their hardships operating in the hottest place on Earth, but the modern world presents its own set of challenges.
When we're practicing out in the desert, it's very easy. It's just me and one other person, and it's very easy out in the sagebrush on a dirt road. This is a very easy hitch to operate, but on asphalt, in crowds, strollers and bicycles and all that kind of stuff, it's a bit of a challenge.
And while the wagons are, of course, equipped with their original brakes, Bobby takes no chances. On a downhill slope on asphalt, Tanner hooks up a pickup truck to the rear tanker wagon for extra stopping power, just in case. Taking the borax wagons out for a spin with the 20 mule team is a major project. First, you have to haul the wagons, mules, and the crew about 200 miles to Death Valley. The mules spend the night at the Furnace Creek stables, and on parade day, they're hauled to the staging area, unloaded, brushed, and harnessed, then hitched up to the 20 mule team chain.
Hooked up pretty easy, huh?
Yeah, there's just a lot of them.
The wranglers who do all this work are part of the team that makes sure all goes well when the wagons go down the road.
Issues that we deal with are asphalt and 90-degree turns and fire hydrants and crowds of people, and we need quite a few people around the animals to make sure they do what they're supposed to do when we're going around the turns and that sort of stuff.
It's a lot of work, but also a labor of love.
Fun to participate in this.
It is. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a neat experience. Good people.
It's clear that all the effort is much appreciated by those who get to watch this living history roll by in person, and an even bigger thrill for those fortunate enough to ride in the wagon.
You guys having fun up there?
Yeah!
As an engineer myself, I can appreciate all the work that they've done to this.
All very satisfying to the co-founder of the foundation that made it all happen.
Authentic wagons, authentic string of mules, authentically driven. I think it's pretty cool.